appreciate very much to have the opportunity to talk here to some security experts and to share our thoughts with you. So welcome to our talk. Let's clear up the debris, what the Snowden leaks mean for your IT security strategy. Hope this works.
Yeah, okay. I'm Sylvia Johnigk. I'm a self-employed IT security consultant for a long time, and I'm also a member of the board of a small NGO, the FIF. It's a Forum Informatikerin für Frieden und gesellschaftliche Verantwortung, or Computer Experts for Responsibility in the Society.
Yeah, and I'm Nothdurft. I'm actually working for Allianz Deutschland AG, which is a big insurance company, of course. And I have to do some legal disclaimer. I also work for FIF. And I'm not officially speaking for Allianz, but this is my private opinion. And I think our group communication would appreciate this. Okay, thank you very much. We start.
Okay.
No, wait, this is mine.
Okay.
Who of you knows this slide? This is officially from the Snowden leaks. And this is strategic partners that are companies that cooperate with the NSA. And they say in both missions, and both missions mean espionage and also means cyber warfare. Okay, so I just have a question to the audience. Who of you has at least with one of these guys relationships, products in place, partnerships?
Okay.
Yeah, who with at least 3 of them?
Okay.
So, and this is what we are talking about today, you know? Okay, let's start.
Okay. Yeah. First at all, we want to give you a rough overview on the content of the Snowden leaks dealing with the security aspects. Then we do some threat assessments on what we found, and then we give you some ideas what we can do with our IT security strategy. Finally, we hope to trigger you some interesting discussion. Okay, the widely discussed and well-known part of the Snowden leaks deals with the mass surveillance of the whole internet. Some parts are really well-known, like PRISM, Tempora, and Xkeyscore, but there are a lot of others which didn't got much attention, like TrackFin, Feskia, Retro, Mystic Retro, and Dishfire. We start with some numbers. So Tempora is a 3-day full take on the traffic on the internet, backbone cables, and metadata are stored even for 30 days. Xkeyscore filters and analyzes the mass data which Tempora collects to find the needle in the haystack. And Xkeyscore can much more. It can also collect data from private persons' computers, so they can much more than only filter the data which goes through Tempora. Feskia is a geolocation database with 5 billion entries of devices and person, and it's collected in a few days only. TrackFin contains any financial transaction performed by credit card payments and most of the money transfer. And last not least, Dishfire processes 149 million SMS per day. And a smaller program, Mystic Retro, is a 30-day telephony full take of selected countries like Iraq and Panama.
And that is from 2011.
12. Well,
12? Was it?
Okay. The Snowden leaks also brought to light that several companies acted as subsidiaries, suspects, or indirect perpetrators of the NSA. So RSA and Yahoo got paid for his efforts. And for Yahoo, it was a little bit complicated because there was forced to cooperate with fines before. They had to pay I think $250,000 per day if they don't cooperate.
Yeah. So they were forced to do so, yeah.
So Booth Hamilton, is very known, but CSC and Stratfor are official sub-providers of the NSA. And yeah, we have the first slide with the 80 strategic partner. Just a few of them are specially mentioned by name in the leaked material, so who are the others? And last but not least, there are a lot of telcos cooperate directly, voluntarily, or forced by law for interception. So in Germany, we can pay a little attention closer to Verizon. Verizon is the provider of our parliament. So I don't think that is a very nice idea. And also level 3 is the sub-provider of our biggest internet node here in Frankfurt am Main. So when you look at the known documents, you see several different sorts of and layers of compromise in IT technology. So products, standards, services, and supply chains. Mostly these are unknown vulnerabilities or intentional weaknesses and backdoors that result in plausible deniability. So well known as maybe the N catalog is a 50-page catalog with attack tools which can be ordered by intelligence services as easy as like shoes you order, well, I order per catalog. Some of the IT products are manipulated during the shipment. If you order something with Amazon, you might be unhappy because you become feature which you haven't ordered. The NIST intentionally introduced weak crypto systems. Okay, I mentioned RSA. Bullrun is a NSA program dealing with the breaking of encryption. And weak crypto like RC4 and MD5 do not resist Bullrun crypto analysis attacks. So the question is, yeah, how many IT products and services from the US companies are compromised? And some historical excursion, sorry. Do you remember in 1999, the WinNT variable NSA key? It was probably used to weaken the Microsoft internal crypto functions. And also in 1999, Lotus, it has become known that Lotus has built a backdoor in his software. And question to the audit, anybody heard about dropout Jeep? Okay. Yeah, it's an iPhone Trojan horse for interception. So overall, we have a nearly total loss of trust in almost everything we use. Yeah, if we look at the Ant catalog, it is a horror show. Hardware sniffers are placed in chassis and covers, WLAN routers, keyboards, or storage devices in specific repacking stations on their way to the customer. Hard disk from Seagate, Samsung, Western Digital are manipulated on the controller level with malicious firmware, and also network equipment from Cisco, Dell, HP, Huawei, Juniper networks are manipulated. Products of these companies are vulnerable to NSA exploits that are mentioned in the catalog. There is no evidence of active cooperations from these companies with the NSA as far as we know, beside HP and Cisco.
They were on the first slide.
So another dangerous aspect in the leaks is the evidence of an extensive and increasing, das ist eigentlich deins.
No, no.
Increasing, hast du mich rausgekommen, military usage of the internet for offensive military activities. So quantum insert is a collection of zero-day exploits for applications that are designed or shopped. Fox SS is a NSA name for targeted attacks against individuals. Fox access means performing social engineering attacks against adversaries or misused secondary targeted, like admins or targeted systems. And the Taylor Access Operation is the NSA hacker unit dedicated to prepare and to conduct attacks, and this unit works since 1998. And they have been 69,000 bots, so that's compromised systems back in 2011, and we think it is a hot stand by cyber army. So the National Intelligence Priority Framework is authorized by President Obama, but only 35% of the budget serves the fight against terrorism. So the next, or the biggest part is economical espionage. So international financial institutes like banks or insurance are identified with the second highest priority. So we know what their intention is, really. But also foreign leaders from government, opposition, as well as NGOs, international organizations, and the United Nations and the European Union are intercepted, and the IT system are compromised to read along encrypted communication. LOVENT is an internal name for the abuse of surveillance tools for private purpose, e.g. stalking or for stalking for private interests. And a judge of the FISA has complained multiple constitutional prohibited interception activities against US citizens as well. So, while the info warfare systematically disinformation and propaganda is intelligence services' daily business. Information about threats and vulnerabilities influenced by intelligence services can be as colored, falsified, or misleading, defined down or accelerated. So we have a new perspective on Manhunt report or semantic region report. Because of the lack of transparency, intelligence services are difficult to control. Democratic control boards misinformed or belied, and the NSA has also manipulated financial transactions. And this juicy detail wasn't in the known documents, but was leaked unintentionally by the report of the Obama Commission investigating the scandal with their proposal then to stop these practices.
And one thing, we have another talk later on about sock puppets, and I think this is also going in this direction. Okay.
So the next part is what does it mean for the companies and for the threats? We start with the general problems. So any company, also yours, can become a target with varying impact or probability. SMEs with innovative products as well as manufacture of security products and communication technology. Even suppliers and subcontractors of primary target can become a target. So widespread spying and surveillance makes it easier to identify people with special knowledge and rights from a targeted company, as happens to Belgacom. It was an admin who was the second target. So
they social engineered the admins of Belgacom and then got access to their networks in Belgium.
To gain specific and useful information about these individuals, to perform advanced social engineering and spear phishing attacks. Also blackmail or forced to collaborate individuals or entire organizations with potential reputational damage. To hand over or corporate to hand over corporate or governance secrets, or to force or to influence decision makers to cooperate. Particularly interesting objects are hosting providers, cloud service providers, hardware manufacturers, software vendors, admins with privileged access rights. So we have a big challenge. Each piece of information must be protected, but we have no secure communication channel left to do so. So each harmless piece of information is screened and analyzed, and therefore contains a potential risk and has to be protected. Internal or confidential business communication is at risk because of economical and military motivated espionage. Even private content information of employee is indirectly misused for target attacks and social engineering blackmails. Metadata connection, geolocation data, PIM data can reveal interesting information since they allow conclusions on the intensity and nature of existing public business relationships. So every public channel, wired telephone, mobile, satellite, voice IP, and so on, is under observation. Corporate networks use these lines for internal data communication from collaborating telcos. Compromised end-user devices, backdoors, and not published weaknesses in operating systems and application software lead to the fatal situation that no trusted platform for encryption exists anymore. We also deal with manipulation of hardware in transit on the delivery route and partially compromised encryption techniques or weak crypto systems. Even VPN have the risk of backdoors because most of them use closed software, and strong encryption is rarely used in just a minimum of a part of communication. There are just a few rarely used exceptions like GNU-PG, OTR, Tor, and encrypted communication.
Okay. So we have to switch now. You should. Du sollst meinen Laptop weiterschalten da dann gleich. Und ich muss hier mal eben kurz in deinen Moment. Und in die Folienansicht.
Hast du schon vorgeschaltet?
Nein, what? So this is a bit complicated because of.
Was machst du? Musst du?
You normal. Okay. So, one thing we are talking about is the threat of military usage. And we think that this is really a very big issue we have to look at. Even without facing really concrete cyber warfare attacks already, or we have already faced some, but it's just the option to use the military things is really a serious threat for any of these 4 dimensions of security. And I think confidentiality we already talked about with all these espionage things, integrity we already talked about with these manipulation things. Availability is something in cyber war that they take down systems maybe. And non-repudiation, this is really an interesting thing, but just think of the manipulation of finance finance transactions, or just have in mind that you might want to blackmail someone, you enter his PC and you drop some child porn on it, yeah? And you poison the chain of custody in a criminal process or so. This is daily business of secret services, things to do so. Okay. Why do we think that cyber weapons are really a big issue? cyber weapons, or we can all call them exploits or malware or whatever, they need undisclosed vulnerabilities. Of course, they need. Because all the lame stuff that is already known can be fixed, can be patched, and so on. And also useful is built-in or undisclosed vulnerabilities in IT products. We already mentioned that also. So, and all these things have often the potential to bring the infrastructure down or to shut down a system or something like this, switch it off, destroy it. There's another problem: they can discover it and exploit it by everyone. No, not everyone, but any good pen tester perhaps, and something like that. So they come also in the hands of non-governmental criminals. We have a next problem that private service providers also take over sovereign functions of state agencies like the NSA. Maybe they want to get some extra money, these people, or the employees of the NSA, and they sell the things to organized crime. And if you remember Stuxnet, that broke out by a programming error in the wilderness. So these things do not keep in a military usage scenario, but come to public and to our normal things. Yeah, summary is military or intelligence service knowledge used for maybe potential attacks or even used for attacks already does not remain exclusively in these domains, but it comes to public, it will be used by anybody. We have other threats. One is that US companies are under the pressure of their local national law. And we had already seen national court decisions against Twitter to hand over their customer data. And we saw another decision, this is still ongoing in the second round, I think, against Microsoft to hand over data. And one very important thing is the Patriot Act. The Patriot Act has a very specific flavor. It's called National Security Letter, NSL. And this is really what we call in English language, I think, a gag order. Yeah? So you forbid somebody to talk about anything what happened there, and they come and they get your data of your customers and so on, and then that was happened to this nice guy here. This is Mr. Lewison from Lavabit, and he was lucky to have one of his customers with the name Edward Snowden, and then they came, yeah. And he was even not able to contact his lawyer for these things and talk with him about what's happening and how he should behave. When you look at your legal issues as a contractor for other companies, you have to look at these privacy contracts. Yeah? We have, for example, if you want to process some data in American data centers, the safe harbor agreements, and they are still valid, but for example, if you have a non-disclosure agreement with US companies, you should look at this. Is this really worth what it tells you in your paper? Yeah? Do you have a chance when US government comes and say, hey, you have to hand over this data? What about this then? Yeah? I want to go a bit deeper in this Microsoft thing. Why is Microsoft going to court and fighting pretty strong? Because that's their business model. They have a data center in Ireland, and they store European data, personal records of customers. And the problem is that a New York court wants them to hand that over for a lawsuit in the US. And this would be against European Union privacy law. So they are in a dilemma now. Yeah? And they hope that they can fix that, but it's not sure how it works. Yeah, this is another thing. Can we trust on our own authorities, or is it more or less another threat? As we think how our German government works in these things, we are not so positive. For example, they didn't react on anything what you have to go to the next one, I think? Yeah. Go to the next slide, I was fast.
You want to fill?
No, go fast, go for. Huh? Okay. So, yeah, I will skip that. But just when you look at the reactions, what they did when there came up these things to light, yeah? There's no asylum for Snowden. The investigation committee in the German parliament was hindered even, yeah? And yeah, I don't go into this that much deep. Next slide, please. We have seen cooperation of our intelligence services with the NSA. So our BND, how it's called, is part of the problem, really. We have long-term cooperation seen already with all the allies' secret services since World War II. And there are agreements like SWIFT agreement, like passenger record flight agreement, to hand over the data and to exchange the data with these services. And we see the BND cooperating with the NSA on several levels. There's a bidirectional data exchange. Somebody called it a stocks exchange for data that they really exchange internationally between, I have some views, can you give me some others? They handed over data they sniffed on the D86 node in Frankfurt. We have a joint venture for a surveillance base in Bad Aibling. So they operate this together, just seat by seat. We have the NSA Dagger complex. This is juicy. At Darmstadt, and that was co-financed by German tax money, really. So we built up some espionage stations here in Germany just against us ourselves. That's interesting. And the BND also uses XKey score, which was one of the tools we mentioned before, and also our Verfassungsschutz runs a pilot. German government wants to become one of the Five Eyes, I already mentioned that. Subcontractors and consultants of the NSA are also used by German government. There's one popular example, which is in a discussion, which is CSC in the moment. So, and when we look at this malware and undisclosed vulnerability problem, we see this nice term Staatstrojaner. So this is more or less a governmental Trojan horse, and it's thought for lawful interception of encrypted traffics of criminals, for example. And the Constitutional Court of Germany called it illegal in the way they used it and made it and built it. And the problem really behind all these things is that the risk is that the vulnerabilities that these tools use have to be disclosed. You cannot fix them. You cannot fix your own company, your own economy, your own citizens. So you can't publish the problem, but you have to use it. Yeah? And that's the same when you use them for cyber weapons in a military way, like the German Armed Forces is now trying. And we had some discussions about D-Email, which is a German initiative or project to spread out encryption for citizens. And that was just TLS layer based encryption, so transport layer. And there is an option for end-to-end encryption, and I think there's now discussion going on to implement PGP on it, but it took really some years already, and a lot of critics, because this is nearly useless, and there you already see the influence of the services, of the security services, that they didn't really want the citizens to communicate securely. They want to intercept these things. And the latest example is the resurrection of the crypto war debate. We hope that already ended in the last century, but it is coming up again like a zombie. And it's installing backdoors for key recovery, key escrow, and encryption things for governmental issues. So let's go to the BSI. So this is the German BSI. It's an authority that is also meant for consulting citizens and companies. And that's why we're talking about here. We think that the BSI fails to protect really the company. It is not independent. It has a conflict of interests, as it has to follow the orders of Ministry of Inner Affairs, where it belongs to. And it also acts for the interests of the intelligence services in the same house. And there was also a leak, I think this week, that the BND also, it was yesterday, that the BND also worked on the Staatstrojaner and helped to develop it and tested it. So this is the problem I mentioned. So they should protect the people and they develop malware. Yeah? And some members of the crypto department of the BND went over to the BSI also. So these are former BND peoples in parts. And the BSI bought vulnerabilities from Wupen. Since yesterday we know why. And there's another question: how far can we trust the consulting of the BSI? How far can we trust certifications they offer or issue to someone? Last but not least, all these smoke grenades, disinformation, propaganda things. As we mentioned, intelligence servers, daily business. But what about the consultants working for them? What about the vendors and the partners of the people? Can we trust their recommendations? Can we trust what they tell us? Their search and study results? Do we rely on this really? That might be co-financed by someone suspicious? Yeah, what about consultants of collaborating companies? Yeah? Just think of this thing of the NIST standards which were compromised and weakened. And one very special friend of us is the Mandiant report. There's already drawn as an example for attribution, how we can find the attacker of a cyber attack. And yeah, it was already mentioned, I think, some troopers ago as a template to blame, how to blame the Chinese. Yeah? Because if you want to camouflage as a Chinese attacker, you just look at this and you know how to do it.
And the Mandiant report was funded with the DoD. Yeah.
So, so this is lots of threats, and when you look at this, we have some things. How the Intelligence Services Act. This is really nearly zero ethical or even political or jurisdictional limitation what they have. Yeah? They do not consider of diplomatic problems that occur when they act with their allies even. I think we are allies, we are not their adversaries. They do not interest in the reputation of US companies they might force to cooperate. They do not hesitate to look at customer confidence or violating even of their own constitution. So no limitations at that place. And what is even more scaring, we think, is this they want it all approach. So they want everything, which is going on the internet, on some companies, on networks or whatever. And that means that they don't accept secure channels and try to compromise anything. And that means any information is a potential sensitive one and has to be protected because it can be misused for social engineering attacks, for looking at profiles of admins they can attack, and so on and so on. Yeah, most existing IT products and technologies are compromised somehow, or there are weaknesses in there. We have vendors and service providers cooperating, also a problem. We have no assistance from our government. Consultants, research studies we rely on, we ask that. So after all, we have to consider that there are also attacks on high-hanging fruits. So it's not just the small things they do it anyway as any criminal do, of course. But this anything what they can do, they will do. Is this I want it all approach. Yeah? And so you have to think of if you're interesting enough and if something is interesting enough they might try it. So we also have to consider paranoid scenarios. Upcoming things that might be very theoretical in the moment or very, very cost intensive for an attack also. So let's go, yeah, what can we do about all this? Yeah. So when you look at all these things, you say, no, it's hopeless. We have no chance to defend against these things. We have to give up the fight. And we think, yeah, we have a huge challenge here, but and there's no easy silver bullet, of course, but we should, and according to the risk we face, we have to do something. Yeah? We have the demands to do something. And what we think of is a long-term or a mid-term holistic and big invest approach. So that's something else than you said for the Microsoft thing. We have to do here more. And we call it stop running on the road of ruin. So a reroute of all what we call former strategies, really. Based on closed source products, based on we use the internet as a nice non-military zone where no battlefield is. I think this is the wrong way. So, and that means that you might write off decades of invest in the wrong products and the wrong directions. Hard thing. But you should do this as soon as possible and as much as is it affordable. And you should look at your vendors and suppliers, as well as the depending processes. And maybe you have to change some things here. Look at your outsourcing contracts. Perhaps you should terminate the one or the other of this. And avoid black box closed source software solutions or products. Check them and replace them wherever possible. we have some legal consequences we have to follow. So BDSG paragraph 11 says you have a mandatory check of the liability of your subcontractors. So just check the list of your subcontractors if they cooperate, and think if they are still reliable in this meaning. So what is mass surveillance and supporting mass surveillance for an intelligence service? It's nearly the opposite of what privacy really wants from you, yeah? And from your sub-providers. And therefore any outsourcing contract has to be reviewed and probably terminated if it's with the wrong person. And new contracts are also risky, since customers become more aware of this thing after the scandal. So we realized this in the discussions. And some privacy activists might start some lawsuits against you if you don't react on these things. And bad reputation is nothing very good. Privacy law is also with the safe harbor thing, which is still valid in the moment, but the European Union Parliament already discusses to end all these agreements, to end this flight passenger agreement, SWIFT, and also safe harbor. It was in the discussion. And maybe the basis is away then. I already mentioned this Microsoft thing. Another thing is liability in general, not just in a privacy way. When you do not choose a reliable partner, there might be other things that come to liability. You can lose your crown jewels, of course, and that may cause some lawsuits also. For stock operations, for example, there might be financial lawsuits from shareholders and investors. And for our company and also many others, we have special management liabilities for risks, for mistakes and failures and risk and emergency management. So if you don't react and if you know better, then you have a problem, liability. And if you know you're a victim or a potential victim of espionage, then you have to do something. And a very specific thing is the liability for disturbance if you run a critical infrastructure. That will be a very interesting liability problem. So I think we skip this because we have not that much time. We think that it's totally stupid to build up a German or a European internet or something like that.
Oh, so we have another 10 minutes, so that's...
Yeah, but I think it's very simple. If you look at it, we have multinational companies, we have supply chains international, we cooperate internationally over continents. So this is stupid, yeah. We do talk about what we can do. We can check and rework our outsourcing guidelines and contracts, for example. And I think it's a good idea to include some no-spy clauses in these contracts, and to demand this also for subcontractors, and that becomes very tricky. Purchasing department guidelines, why do not have a positive rating of somebody who says, I do not cooperate with intelligence services? That might be a plus in a selection of providers. Yeah, careful choice of security products and services. Yeah, look at hidden backdoors and collaboration. Just imagine you run an IDS, and this is not looking at specific things, especially because they are forced to do so. I think we had some discussions on FireEye yesterday already.
Yeah, FireEye discussion yesterday.
Yeah. Yes, that's what I meant. Yeah. We have a possible test the effectiveness if this really runs good. Also against sophisticated attacks. Yeah, and avoid black box things and closed source solutions. Another thing what you can do is your employees. We face that there is no strict segregation anymore between private life and business life. So you have BYOD, bring your own device scenarios. Or another example is Facebook accounts. If you run a business Facebook account, somebody, then you also use that for private purposes because Facebook allows only one. So if you are a Facebook person for your company, and then you are also a private person there. So there's just one account for this. Or private calendars and business calendars. If the people still have two separated ones, and that's not all the case, then they will synchronize these things. Yeah? So there's no strict strict line between these things anymore. So what you need, you have to engage your employees by their own personal and private motivation on privacy and security, and raise their awareness on the risks of private insecure behavior in the public or in the private social networks or whatever, and also for their devices. So security for the devices of your employees, their private devices, is an issue. Give consultancy and support for these things. If you have that anyway for your company, why don't give some regulations for how to secure a private Apple device or something like that? If you use BYOD, this should be a good idea anyway. Yeah? And think of this Fox asset spear phishing attacks against employees. So also just talking about, well, I'm working for Allianz and blah, 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 and I'm doing this and this is nice, can be a risk for you. And it can be a risk that they are too open to whatever that happens there. And another thing, teach them to encrypt. It's quite simple, you know, the crypto party movement. So we started already to make crypto parties in our company just as in part of the normal IT education program, and that helps us, of course. Yeah, free software, or at least open source products, which is not the same. When I'm talking about free software, I mean Richard Stallman's definition. Free is in the meaning of freedom, not of free beer. And there is no free lunch. And that leads to a thing you should support, if you can, free software projects with money. Yeah? Especially if you use them for critical things, like encryption or so. You should finance code audits and quality reviews on these products. And if you develop closed software, it might be a good idea to release it. It gets better for the public. Fee some bug finders, like Google does. Allow your company developers to publish their implementations in free licenses. And replace closed source wherever possible. And we had a lot of discussion about the Heartbleed bug. And yes, it's a stupid thing, and it's really, really bad. But we think that it's more an example that open source really works, because the bug finders from Google found it and fixed it. Yeah? So, and that was possible because they could look into the code. How many problems do we have in closed source products when we have these in open source things? Yeah, I go over this. Encryption as the cure-all silver bullet. Edward Snowden said that strong crypto still works. That's nice, and that's why the NSA has this big bull run program to heartbreak all these things. But there are some weak algorithms and products you have to skip off. And another thing is you should use strong crypto wherever possible, not just in the high-risk scenarios. Any web application you have should be secured. You should use perfect forward secrecy, all these things. I don't have to mention that here, but it should be default for anything. Why? It makes this they want it all approach difficulty. They have to look more, and they have to spend more resources on breaking all this stuff. And so they might oversee also the important things that they can concentrate on the other way. So why not have any email client in any company with pre-configured SMIME or PGP installed on it and ready to use for every customer? Every hard disk encrypted. Sorry, I skipped that. Yeah, and also demand and offer encryption, communication options, whatever, to your partners, to your customers. So make the I want it all approach more difficult for the NSA. One problem really we face is that we do not have really trusted encrypting and decrypting devices anymore when we look at all these things. We just mentioned here some, but this is really a problem we have to work on. I think there's another talk from Benedikt Stockebrand about secure hardware. Maybe we find something there. Reducing risks. Yeah, these are normal things you should do anyway. Segregation, decentralization, redundancies. I think it's quite obvious that it reduces the risk. If somebody comes in, it's not that easy. The whole network is owned and so on. You have better controls on your network boundaries. You have robustness against perhaps even a cyber warfare attack. And isolation is a thing. Why do I mention this here? Because it's the opposite of what some managements do really in the moment. So for security people it's clear, but we have to tell the message that this is necessary and still. This is something, we called it advanced paranoia procedures. So if you are a company with, on this Obama list with a high priority, so we are not high priority, we are just second high priority. If you are a military unit or if you produce arms, then you are more interesting. But if you are a finance institute, if you're insurance or something like that, then you're on the second highest priority list already. And for the protection of your very, very crown jewels, you should look at these things. Expect also the unexpected. So this is what I meant, they might get some sophisticated attacks. This is theoretical. No, it's not theoretical. They might use it if it's important enough. The shipping problem. You order some software, they open the box, and they put in some sniffers. Perhaps you should masquerade your delivery lines? I don't know. Is it possible to go to a third party and say, hey, order that for me, but don't mention that it's for me? Trusted third party, maybe? Without credit card payment of my company? Interesting. But remember, they have TrackFin, and they can relocate any order of any credit card, and there was a company card of this company, okay. So this router is going to this company, just manipulate it a bit. Another challenge is conspirative business meetings. So if you want to plan a merger and acquisition, you want to buy another company, or you get bought by another company, and there's some organizational things in place, and well, the booking for this conference or for this meeting, the hotel reservation, this is interesting how you do that without using your company accounts for this. Maybe you should book a private holiday trip to the same whatever exotic location where also the other persons fly to. And yeah, just managing Outlook calendars or these calendars over cross companies and doing this in an encrypted way, or sending the invitations over encrypted channels is already a challenge, I think. And just who uses Tor for this to avoid the metadata? So this is really paranoid, like you need there. But I heard that there was a company doing this?
Telecom.
Yeah, Telecom, yeah, okay. So again, we look at these priorities. Of course, start with the quick wins. Start now to change your IT security strategy in the right direction towards free and open software only. Help crowdfunding and company-sponsored development of secure open source solutions and platforms. And there's another thing, I think we can't fix that just on a technical way, but we need pressure on politics. So you should ally as companies and as private persons with associations in the civil society against this mass surveillance thing and against cyber warfare and of intelligence services on our internet, because we use it all. And that's why we had a symbol here. This is from a fifth campaign we are also running, the Cyber Peace campaign, and we are trying to work on the political pressure against all these things. Yeah, so we come to our last slide. I hope we have time. Yeah. So I said, is it hopeless? Those who fight can lose. Those who do not fight have already lost. Thank you for your attention.